So starting off pretty simple, what got you interested into professional racing?
Yeah, so motorsports and car racing was actually something that was in our household from the time I was born. My father raced cars for about 20 years and I grew up at the racetrack. But originally, I was a triathlete with the dream of making it to the Olympics. I was competing at a pretty high level for triathlons. And of course, my competitive mind got very obsessed with the idea of being the best and being the best that I can be. And unfortunately, I was overtraining and developed a hip injury, which actually ended up ending my career for triathlons. And I kind of sat back and said, oh, what am I going to do next? I need something competitive. And I said, you know what? Let me put myself into go-karting because that's something that's not too much impact on the hip and it's competitive. And it turned out that, I just had a natural knack for racing and just took my career from go-karting into car racing. And now it's my full-time thing.
Sounds awesome.
Wow,
Sorry about your hip though.
Yeah, you know what? Everything happens for a reason. It was devastating at the time, but it turned out to open a door for something that I believe I was meant for. Because looking back on it now, I love driving. From the time I was 10, I was driving standard. I was ripping around in anything that had an engine, really. So the dream of driving was always there. And I always actually imagined myself racing dirt bikes. I'd be in the back seat of the car with my parents, and I'd be imagining driving through the ditches of the farmers' fields and everything. So I think it was always kind of there, but I just needed something to directly shift me over there.
Yeah, for sure. So how long have you been racing for?
Yes, so I've been racing cars now for going on 6 years, and I've been working my way through the industry through go-karting and even just involved in the motorsport industry for the last 12 years.
Awesome.
Awesome.
How long does someone have to train before they can compete professionally like you do? Or is it like specific to the person and situation?
It has a lot to do. I mean, it's a pretty open-ended question because it's how much the individual kind of needs, but there is a process definitely to be at a professional level. There are schools that you have to complete. There are racing schools and certificates and exams that you have to be able to pass. Some people are able to get into that quicker and to come up to par a lot quicker than others, but I do recommend spending a couple of years go-karting at a minimum, get some in-car training, perhaps for another couple of years, and practice your racecraft and advanced driving, and then go and get your racing license, compete at a regional level for the time being, get your racecraft developed and everything like that, and then go ahead and do it. It's a process, honestly. Hopping into a car, it's not a funny joke, and it's not a game where you can just pick up and go for it. It is a dangerous sport. We do know the dangers that come with it, and it's a sport that if you're not prepared and you haven't built a solid foundation before getting into the car and competing at those high speeds and demanding so much out of yourself and the vehicle, you really don't want to miss out on the fundamentals. You want to build that base first before you just hop into a sport like racing.
Wow. I didn't know that there were like tests and stuff involved, but that makes sense. Could you discuss some of the dangers of racing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do try to keep ourselves obviously as safe as possible, and it's a lot safer than it was back in the day. Safety equipment and safety protocol has just advanced so much from over the time. But obviously you're at high speeds. There's so many factors that can kick in, say mechanical failures. All of a sudden you have something snap or break or pop on your car, and you're all of a sudden not in control of your vehicle anymore. And so there's the risk of something happening at a high speed. There are walls around, there are other cars around, and accidents do happen. I mean, I've gone head on into a wall, flipped the car, I was trapped inside, engine was catching fire, and I had to find a way out. And it's one of those things, and it's part of that sport where you kind of have to accept the dangers of it prior to getting in there, because you can't race with fear, or else you're not gonna progress to your ultimate ability if you have that fear behind the wheel. But there are many dangers with racing, but we do have roll cages, we have neck braces, we have have fire retardant suits on. We have the medical staff there. I mean, there's just so much to it, our helmets and everything. But unfortunately, things happen, and there are fatalities that do happen on the racetrack, but it's the risk that we take, and it's something that we make peace with before going on track.
Wow, that takes a lot of mental stuff to be okay with that, because that would be terrifying, like knowing that you're flipped over and stuff. Wow.
Yeah, it's the mental preparation to obviously get into the sport and to understand that those are the dangers that are associated with it. But in the event that something does happen, it's also the mental strength to overcome it and to not allow yourself to get attached to the fear or to really kind of replay the accident too many times in your head. It's just kind of like, okay, let's make peace with it. It happened. Okay, that's racing. And let's focus on our next thing. Let's focus on the next race, you know, and just get your mind focused on just getting right back into a car to overcome those fears. So there's mental demand on many aspects of racing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you did touch on it a little bit, but we were wondering if you had ever been injured on a track where when you flipped the car, like, did you get hurt in any way or?
Yeah, so accidents, when they do happen, because we have so much safety equipment, you are quite protected. So thankfully, I mean, my crash, it wasn't small, it was pretty big, but I was able to walk out. I mean, I had some neck injuries and a little bit of nerve damage on the top of my head. And besides that, and obviously just being very much bruised from being thrown into the steering column, I did have my harness to kind of keep me in there. And we practiced. We know how to brace for high impact accidents and did everything that we were taught. So I was able to walk away safely. And that's the main thing. And when you're inside the vehicle, it's kind of like military. You go boom, boom, boom. You know exactly what to do. Escape from here. That's not working. Let's go to the next procedure and get yourself out. But there's been a few accidents, and the worst thing I've had was just a little bit of neck problems. You take quite the force.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's fortunate that the safety equipment has advanced so much to keep people safe.
Absolutely.
And we were wondering, how would the same situation be handled on public streets for illegal street racing? Like, let's say their car flipped over.
Yeah. See, this is where I actually get goosebumps even thinking about that happening to a regular vehicle, because race cars are designed to take an impact like that. We have roll cages that come right over us on the sides. We're completely protected by a cage. We have 5-point harnesses that come from here on your waist up through your legs with a neck brace on that's latched onto your helmet, so you can't whip your head too much to snap your neck or anything like that. Vehicles today, they might be top safety pick plus, awesome, but they don't have all of that material and safety equipment around them. So for example, me going into a wall at 100 kilometers and flipping the car, I was protected. I was okay. I was able to walk out with just some minor neck injuries. Somebody who's doing that on the main roads, they're coming down the 401, you know, and at 150 kilometers, they're able to slow their car down a bit before smashing into the guardrail. Their car would look like a baby shoe. It would just be crumpled in. If they flipped it, you know, there's a chance that the top might crush in on them. A snapped neck, even just from the force, they don't have the neck brace on them. They could be projected through the window because they don't have a proper harness on them. There is just so many factors that can be factored into that. Street cars are nothing like race cars. They're both cars, but they are not properly structured for an impact like that.
Yeah, for sure. They're not made to go at the speeds that you're going at and meant to go from point A to point B, and that's it. So
Absolutely.
With that said, what is your opinion on illegal street racing?
Don't do it. That I don't, there's so many factors into that which make it just not okay to do. I mean, if you value your own life, or you can at least be considerate of other people's lives, you'll understand that street racing is just so out there. I don't understand why people would want to be risking that. You might think you're an incredible driver. Okay, I understand that. But you can't control external factors. Say you're coming up at somebody doing 150 kilometers and that person gets like freaked out a bit and swerves their car. They've now created a moving obstacle for you. When you go to turn your car like that, you've now completely offsetted the balance of the vehicle. You now can snap the back end or spin the car out. What if an animal jumps out at you? What if it starts raining and you can't control the slipperiness, the conditions on the surface? There are just so many factors that can contribute into stunt driving just not being okay. Come and bring it on a racetrack where it's supposed to happen, where you're in a closed environment. You can be safe. You have a rescue team to come and get you in the event that something happens, but you also have an instructor sitting with you to teach you how to do it properly. There's so many factors. Say you're coming drifting around a corner. There's curbs. There's massive curbs like this. What happens if you drift out a little bit too far and hit that? Your car is going to do one of these and it's not going to be pleasant. And so there's so many things. It's illegal. It's not cool. It's not safe. Just don't do it.
For sure. And I guess you kind of answered our next question, but what are some of the risks people don't normally think about? And those are, I guess they're kind of natural things that exist, but at high speeds with lots of different elements involved, then they're huge risks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whether animals, pedestrians, cars, debris, like the list could just go on for miles and miles of things that can pop up and just not be okay. Mechanical failures. Our cars are meticulously maintained before we even touch the track. We've had it from A to Z inspected, the entire car. And street cars, I mean, how often are you out there torquing your wheels, checking every bolt and nut on the vehicle before you go out and start doing stuff like this? No, mechanical failures happen. They're just vehicles. They're just an object. They break. And so you can even factor in that, where your vehicle can just snap on you and all of a sudden you have no steering or you have no brakes or you don't have a tire. What if your tire popped? Like, there's so many.
And there's no one there to fix it. Like, you would have someone there to change it for you right away. But yeah, that's very scary.
For sure.
We were wondering, do you believe there is a link between illegal street racing and films or video games?
You know, it's kind of funny because growing up, a lot of my generation idolized the Fast and Furious movies. And a lot of what they do is stunt racing and street racing and such, right? So you never know. Perhaps, I mean, it can go both ways. You can either get motivated by those films and say, wow, I love those cars, and you want to go out and purchase that car. Okay, cool. Or wow, I love their driving. I want to drive like that, but do it responsibly and take it to a racetrack. So it's kind of all in the individual and their level of knowledge and understanding of what's right and what's wrong. And I feel like if they're not educated to know where that lies, or they might, be influenced by the wrong people. I think that's why it's so important for us to be sharing this message and to be kind of the younger generation, because obviously the targeted area is between 18 to 25, typically males. And I mean, it doesn't just fall in that category. There's people from different genders and age categories that, will factor into this. But I think it's just so important to educate the public and to educate friends and those who are near us too of the dangers of it, and to tell them that it's really not cool. And then perhaps, you can be motivated by those films to get into cars and to get into motorsports, just not to do it on the roads.
Yeah, for sure. So you have already touched on our next question, but we were wondering what sort of safety equipment do you use while racing that isn't available to street racers?
Yeah, I mean, we have fully caged cars. I don't think full cages are allowed in vehicles. I think maybe just the half cage behind you is available. But honestly, if it was up to me, I would tell everybody to cage their cars just in the event. But like if it was legal, if they could mandate that. But we have roll cages. We have fire retardant suits. So we're in full racing gear. Underneath us, we have our Nomex shirts and our pants and our underwear and our socks. We have our
down to like the nitty gritty like that. That's crazy.
down to the nitty gritty for sure, because we want to protect ourselves. If we're stuck in there and the car is in flames and we can't get out and we're waiting for somebody, we want as much protection before it gets to our skin as possible. We have obviously our gloves, which has that same material as well as our shoes, a balaclava that comes over your face, and then your helmet on. So your helmet protects you obviously from whacking your head around. We have hands devices that come all around our neck and sit underneath our harness so that we can't snap our necks forward or backwards. It keeps us pretty strained there. We have our racing seats, which have halos around us to keep our heads kind of safe and in one place. We have everything. We have fire suppression systems in the vehicle. So as soon as the car is on fire, we can pull a tab so that it starts spraying the extinguishers all over the vehicle to try and put the fire out before the medics and the fire rescue team can get there. There's just so many things. Our cars are prepped for this. Street cars, they're prepped for creature comforts. They're prepped for that. They have top safety pick plus. They have their airbags, but they don't have the rest of the equipment.
Yeah, exactly. And you did just answer our next question too. So I'll move on to the other one. Is there any advice you would give to illegal street racers who are passionate about racing, and how could they hone this passion in a safe environment? So like you said, going to the track, but are there other ways as well?
Any advice that I have for the street racers, again, is don't do it. Honestly, guys, you think that's fun. You think it's fun to be out there on the 407, bum, 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 honk your horn and off you guys go, or to just be zooming in and out of traffic. I'm telling you, if you think that is fun, come and experience a racetrack. I'm telling you, your thrill level will be like skyrocket and be like, why was I ever doing this on the street where I was worried about cops, worried about pedestrians, worried about curbs, worried about so much stuff. On the racetrack, we're telling you, go faster, on throttle, go, 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 brake deeper, brake deeper. And you know, we're pushing you out of your comfort zones, and we're pushing you to go so fast. And you walk out of there with this massive smile on your face, like, why was I ever doing this on the street? Like, it sucks on the street. I'm telling you, from somebody who's grown up at the racetrack, like, I'm telling you, it is so much fun to bring in a closed environment where you're actually encouraged to do it. You know, you don't have that fear in the back of your head. Something can go wrong. I can get pulled over by the cops. I can lose my license, impound my car, charge me for stunt driving, arrest me. There's so many things that can go wrong. If you have the need for speed, there are so many different options that you can do. Say you don't have a vehicle that you want to bring to a racetrack, you can come and hop in the ride, like in the car with us. You can get some experiences like that. GTA Exotics, just here in Toronto, you can actually schedule and pay for a couple of laps to drive an exotic car, a Lamborghini Aventador, Gallardo, Huracan, Porsche GT3 RS, a Ferrari 488 GTB. Like, there's so many cars that you can ride, and it's just, you pay for a couple of laps and you go and take supercars out onto a racetrack. Like, why would you want to go and say another vehicle on the street where it's illegal and not safe? So many options.
That's super
Sounds
cool.
fun.
Yeah, I want to do that now.
You guys should, if you want. I was just instructing with them for the last 3 days. So if you guys want more information on that, I'll definitely tell you guys more.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have heard that often at these illegal car events and illegal street races, drugs and alcohol are involved. What is your input on that?
If that is the case, I don't participate in any of that. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do any of that stuff. But it's just common sense. Driving while impaired of any sort of kind is just, your reaction times are debilitated. Your ability to make good decisions is now out the window. You know, you see all of these commercials too where people think, oh, I can you know, drinking and driving, I can have, like, you know, 3-4 drinks and I'll be fine, I can still talk properly and walk straight. But the truth is, you are now impaired. Either you like it or not, there is some effect on you, and things happen so quickly where I just would say absolutely not. If you've had anything that could impair your ability, do not get into the vehicle. Even if you have a severe headache or you've had a really rough day and you can't stop crying. Those are all impairing factors as well, even when you're driving, that you need to take into account. Never mind alcohol or drugs, where it can completely disorientate your brain and your overall judgments. To get into a vehicle, absolutely not. No, that's just silly. It's reckless. It's irresponsible, and it's dumb.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you ever heard of anyone doing that before professional street racing? Or sorry, not street racing, professional racing.
No, no, no. We would never like to do anything like that. Absolutely not. We're way smarter than that to even consider doing that.
Sounds about right. So most professional drivers feel safer on the track than they do on the street. Do you feel the same?
Absolutely. It's crazy when you're on the streets. You have such a wide variety of drivers, if you will, and you see some people doing some crazy maneuvers, crazy stunts, or you just even see some cars where you're like, that is not fit to be on the road. Like, there's so many things wrong with that. And as a driver and a professional in that field, when we're on the racetrack, we know we're on the track with other professional drivers who have our background, have our experience, have our common sense to be on the track. And we know that it's a closed environment with those professionals. So when you're out there, you trust that person going mirror to mirror, wheel to wheel through a corner. You see them coming up behind you. They'll know that they'll get around you safely. When you're on the 401 or on the highway here, you see some people just like zooming past 3 lanes or trying to swerve in and out of traffic, trying to drive on the shoulder, right on the back of cars. And you're kind of just sitting there like, come on, like, why? Like, just, it's very scary to be on the roads. And there's so many other factors too. I mean, we don't have to consider a little kid popping out on the racetrack, you know what I mean? Or a pedestrian or a person on the racetrack. With street driving, there are just so many different things that can pop up and become an obstacle for you.
For sure. To switch gears a little bit now, you shared with us that you have a very personal story about why this issue matters to you. Would you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I can elaborate a bit more on that. So when I was in high school, we lost my aunt to a reckless driver. She was driving home. She worked at our elementary school, and she was on her way home, and this individual thought that it would be smart to be traveling at speeds well over the speed limit and run through a red light. And that's where she had T-boned my aunt and took her life on the spot there. And it was crazy because I was actually on my way home from a rugby tournament, and they had shut off the streets, and it was the street that I needed to go down. We all live in the same town. And I just remember being like, I don't know, that's got to be a really bad accident. And I remember saying like, okay, well, I hope everybody's okay. And I rerouted myself. Later that night, I did find out that it was my aunt. And it's such a devastating loss. And it's traumatizing too, because her daughter, my cousin Janie, actually was on her way home and saw the cop cars and looked into the ditch and said, that looks like the Christmas bag I gave mom. And as she drove up, she realized that it was her mom's car, and she ran out of her car and actually had to see her mom in the vehicle deceased. And how do you ever get that out of your head? How do you ever forgive somebody for being so reckless and taking a life? And then you have to go to court and fight for justice for her as well. And it's just, you feel so useless. You feel like you couldn't even do anything. You know, she was a fundamental aspect of our family, and now she's taken, she's gone. We'll never see her again. Because somebody decided to be reckless out on the road. So it is something that has impacted and devastated our family personally, which is why I'm so honored to be able to kind of fight for this and to be able to kind of do that in her honor.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Real people and families are truly affected by this, and I think a lot of times people think it's not going to happen to me, or I'm too good of a driver for that to happen, but that's why our campaign is so important, and we thank you for supporting it. Do you think that there's anything more we could do to stop illegal street racing?
I think raising awareness is always step number one. Absolutely. I think the more people we get the message out to, and the more people we can kind of encourage and share these messages to, everything, I feel like the biggest movements start as a ripple effect. You might have a team like this, but then they start talking, and it slowly starts going, to a wider range of people. So I think the most that anybody can ever do is to speak up about the situation, to raise awareness, to be passionate about it, and to not really lose that, to keep trying to fight. If it's something that's important for you, you fight for it. So I think as much as we can do, just raise awareness. That's the biggest thing, and to kind of get that into their into their heads. And I think that's the most that people can do. I'm sure whatever that means to raise awareness, there's obviously marketing events or perhaps driving events that we can organize, but all of that is factored into raising awareness.
For sure. Thank you.
Of course.
And if you aren't in a rush, we have a couple bonus questions to ask, just that we thought of that would be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. What's going on?
Have you ever considered doing stunts for films?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to be doing that. That's actually the next step in my career. I'll be filming in my first movie actually this summer. So I can't say too much because we haven't released any of the information on the movie, but I'll have a small acting role in it too. And I will be doing all of the stunt driving for the movie as well. So I've teamed up with a gentleman, Taz Garcia. He's an incredible stunt actor, Canadian stunt actor, and he does a wide variety. Just to label it stunt actor really doesn't do it justice. He's worked with Jackie Chan, John Cena, or Jason Cena, I can't remember which one or what the name is, but he's worked with amazing, incredible people, and he's kind of taken me on for the movie. So it's just an honor to be working with him as well. So stunt driving is definitely the next step for me.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, and once you are allowed to reveal more information, please let us know, and then we can watch and be like, we know her.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
And what has been your top speed while professionally racing?
Yeah, just under 300 kilometers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Exciting.
But then you gotta take that speed and incorporate it into a corner. That's where the excitement comes from me. It's not necessarily the straight line speed that really gets me going. It's really like, okay, so I've gotten up to say 285 kilometers. How can I now take as much of that and bring it through the corner and have control of the vehicle while doing it? That's the exciting part for me.
Sounds exciting. Racing is generally a male-dominated industry. Have you ever felt that being a woman in your field has held you back or is a bonus, or do you feel it has no effect?
Yeah, there's definitely pros and cons of it. I mean, on a marketing aspect, obviously it is kind of nicer because you're unique, you stand out. Sometimes I'm the only female at the racetrack. And it's kind of nice to see, a few other females starting to make a presence in there. And there's been many before me as well who have helped pave the way. As a female in the male dominated industry, really, you just have to be okay with working a little bit harder to gain your respect in your designated field, whatever that is. I know that when I first started racing, I was kind of looked at like, oh, you're racing, like that's cute, you know what I mean? And then I started making podium. I started winning. I started being a dominating force out on the track. And then all of a sudden it was intimidating, and people were trying to either protest my car for things that didn't even make sense. They were trying to say my roll cage wasn't up to par, just so that they could try to eliminate me. So you'll get a lot of backlash. You'll get a lot of a little bit more of the ego associated with it, and it will just take a little bit more work and a little bit more effort to earn your respect as a female. But you have to come into that industry knowing that you are limited. There, you are the minority kind of in that industry, and it's okay, take it on as a challenge. You might have to work a little bit harder. Maybe that's not fair, but in the long run, you also have to take a look at the bigger picture of what you're doing, kind of paving the way. When I see young female go-karters or little girls that come to the racetrack and they say, oh, I'm so sorry.
That's
There we
okay.
go. I had an incoming phone call. I just had to decline that. But when you see those little girls having a passion coming into the sport, you kind of know, okay, I'm doing something right because I'm making her life a little easier when she wants to come through the ranks. And I'm giving her an inspiration to show her, like, you can do it. You can be here. You can be doing this. It's possible. You don't have to take a look at all the male drivers and think that, oh, I'm not a guy. I can't do that. So when you kind of focus in on that, I just feel like there's so much purpose behind what I do as a female in a male dominated industry, and you're okay with working a little bit harder to prove yourself.
Yeah, that's super cool and very admirable.
Thank you.
And for our final question, we wanted to know if you run your own social media.
I do run all of my own social media. I do have a racing account, Demi Chalkias Racing, which is run by Carly Pennington. She is a marketing guru at a fairly young age too, and she's actually an up-and-coming racer to look out for. She's go-karting and she's dominating the field. She's actually working with major racing teams as their tire technician too. So she is just a force to be reckoned with, and I can't wait to see her move herself up the ranks. So the only social media handle that I am not using or not actually managing fully myself is my Demi Chalkias Racing account. But anything that's just at Demi Chalkias is all me.
Nice, that's awesome. I just graduated from advertising and marketing, so if you need someone else to take over.
Perfect. I would love to take you on.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us, and we learned even more, and we really appreciate it, so thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. Thank you for doing what you do. I appreciate being a small part in your guys' big vision. So thank you for having me.